Non, c'est bien. Est-ce que je peux les jouer?
I went to those parties in Blackburn, yes, absolutely. But those parties were just they were a big part of something really big in my life at the time, which is when acid house arrived in '89. You cannot underestimate how big a change it made to the country. Before, the country was grey. Everybody wore brown or grey. There was no colour. There was a conservative government. The British were, like the British are very famous for being very controlled and not very happy, not very bright, and acid house came and just challenged everything. So I was a part of that. It hit me, and I really embraced it, and embraced it so much that for the next 10 or 15 years I made a living out of dance music. I had record shops, I DJ'd, I produced music, I did nightclubs, I did everything. When I became 32 and I thought I wanted to move out of music into something else, and I really wanted to start in documentary, make films, the obvious film to me was to make a film about acid house. Why did I choose Blackburn? Because Blackburn for me summed up everything that was pure and special about that time. Because that time was many different things, but there was something really amazing about that time, really revolutionary, and Blackburn, through my experience, summed it up. It wasn't the only thing like that in the country, but for me, for what I experienced, it was amazing. I wanted to make a documentary, and this was the first documentary I made. So before, when I started making this film, I hadn't even used a camera before. I just picked up a camera and started making the film. Fortunately, I knew the story really well because it was my world. But I hadn't any money. I made the few interviews, I found this footage, and I put together a very short film. And I think some people realized there was something in this, including the film school that I went to. The film school, they took me in a really good film school. I learned how to make documentaries properly. I came out, and then I wanted to make this into a longer film. I didn't want to have to redo all the interviews because there was something fresh. Even though it's not the most accomplished filmmaking, there was something really strong and raw in the material. So I took this material, I took it to all the TV companies, all the film funds. Nobody would give me any money. Can you imagine, towards the end you had nearly 10,000 people. It wasn't 10,000 to start with, but towards the end there was 10,000 people. All in a warehouse at the same time. Everybody to get there had to get past the police. They'd gone in a convoy, they'd found it, they'd jumped over walls, they'd run across fields, there'd been police and dogs, and they get into this room. Just to get there, already you're feeling really high, you know, you're like, wow, I'm in this place. And then 10,000 people, all at the same time, some are on chemicals, some aren't, they all go through the same journey with the music. Every time a record came in that the room recognized, everybody would be cheering and clapping. 10,000 people at the same time, because everybody was on the same buzz. We felt like it was us against the world, it was us against society. We had to fight the police to get in, and we were going to enjoy it. Of course, it was amazing. When you say to people today that everybody that was involved in that party, from the organizers to even the people that built the speakers, they were put in prison. And that's crazy. You're put in prison for putting on a party. Was it really that much of a threat that they had to put people in prison? And this isn't like your nice prison. You know, these were prisons where it had the highest suicide rate in the country, where if you go into that prison, you had to fight for your life to survive. And they were putting these young guys into these prisons to scare them into not doing the parties anymore. Because when they weren't in the prison because they committed a crime, they were in the prison because they were waiting for their trial. When the trial came, every single person, it got thrown out of court. It was the government misusing their power. And this is the important thing about this film. It's not just about music. I hope, anyway, that people see we need to watch our government, because if they misuse their power, if they're scared about something, this is what they do. It happened 20 years ago to these people who put on parties. It's happening now to the so-called war on terror, you know, whatever the next thing that comes along that threatens the government, this is the kind of thing that they do. And I think that was an important thing to tell. This is not just about running around in a warehouse. This is about our human rights, our basic human rights. And they were abused then. At the time, nobody had a video camera. Nobody even had a phone or with a camera. Like today, you look at people in parties, everybody's watching the party through the camera. They're trying to think how they're going to write on Facebook that they did their party. That didn't happen in those days. Nobody had a camera. If somebody had a video camera, the organizer would have said, look, you know, this is illegal, please don't film in here. One guy who was a friend of Tommy and Tony, his parents had a local village shop. Nobody had a shop, nobody had a camera in those days, but this shop would rent a camera to people who wanted to film their wedding or their christening or something. If the camera was still in there on a Saturday night, this guy Bob, he would take it out the shop, he would film the parties, and then he'd put it back in there. When I heard about this footage, everybody said, there's no way you'll get this footage. It's impossible. He won't give it to anybody. I left notes everywhere for him. He phoned me up. He said, okay, come and see me. I saw him. Within an hour of speaking to him, I went away in my car with a box full of VHS tapes because he understood that I wasn't trying to sensationalize the parties. I was going to really tell the real story from someone who was there. And he wanted his footage to be used in a real way, and I was really lucky. Without that footage, I wouldn't have had a film. There'd be a load of people talking about, like me now, saying what a great time, but when you can actually see it, that really makes a difference.